Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Happy you're here. Whoa, I'm kind of zoomed in today, aren't I? Zoom out a little bit. You don't need to get that close. Yes, Brian Smith, it is that time. Sweet samba sounds of a Friday. Cheers, everybody. I had a great conversation with Alyssa Faden last night. If you didn't get to check that out, check it out. My schedule may be going a little bit strange next week. I will try to post more about it in other places. I have family coming for an extended stay. Might affect how often I get on to stream. I don't think I'm going to be able to stream on Monday because I'm going to be doing an airport pickup. But we shall see. I'm out of sync, says Bob Mostel. Ooh. All right, let me try stopping my video and restarting it. Hold on. Oh, back in sync now, or as I did something. All right. Without further ado, let's do what we came here to do. Hopefully I remain in sync for the rest of this thing. There's always something. Wouldn't be a Friday without something going wrong. I forgot last time. Let me bump up the... No, not you. Wrong window. You over here. Bump you up a little bit. Let's see, what did we say? All right, something like that. Fully in sync. Oh boy. All right, let me give this a quick refresh. We are on the OSR subreddit. We are on the hot tab as usual. Feel free to follow along at home. Okay. Nothing hit refresh on their end. Interesting. I don't know. We'll just have to deal with it. Hopefully it won't be something that plagues us all as other things are wont to. What have we got here in OSR today? Weirdest places to play. Hireling cards for players, for their players. House rule. Dark Souls inspired defense for in Cairn or Into the Odd type games. I don't really have much of a horse in this race, but give it a look. This was submitted by Mr. Kitten Mittens. So I love Cairns / Into the Odds no-hit roll attack system. However, I've also been hooked on Elden Ring, which I have yet to play, as one is. And I've been playing around with the idea of more active defense for a while. The goal was to give the players more interesting tactical choices while not ignoring their loadout and character skills. Simple version. The Warden will declare which enemies will attack which character. Before damage is rolled, a character under attack has 4 options. Fight back. Choose one attacker and deal your damage against it after you've taken the incoming damage. Dodge. Any incoming strong or weak attacks become impaired. Block. Any incoming fast or weak attacks become impaired. Or parry. Choose one attacking opponent that you are able to attack in return. If you roll higher attack damage than they do, their dice roll is invalidated and you deal your damage straight to their strength. If the opponent rolls higher, the damage is dealt to your strength instead. That's the simple version. It's been a while since I've been in Cairn / Into the Odd. I don't recall the incoming or strong versus weak. But it's interesting. I wouldn't mind having if there was some kind of and this could be not for just Cairn or Into the Odd, but anything. If you wanted to have, what do they usually term it? Like a rock, paper, scissors type approach to attacks. I think it works best though. Some way we can do it fast. When you're doing rocks, paper, scissors, right? You're doing it quickly. I'd want to have something where it's quick, has some kind of meaning, but isn't going to get into analysis paralysis territory of someone spending ages trying to figure out what kind of attack they're going to do and then whether they should defend it. I might also want to limit this stuff to fighters because, you know, they're fighters and everybody else just kind of has to take more chances. Anyway, so you get a couple options: parry, block, dodge, or fight back. There's an active roll version in which the Warden will declare which enemies will attack which character. Before damage is rolled, the character under attack has 4 options. I see. So the first one just basically had, you were setting states to various things. And this one, you're making it roll. So if you fight back, that one's actually the same. You just deal your damage. If you're dodging, now you're making a dex save. You add your current armor to the roll. Roll with advantage if the incoming attack is strong or weak. Optionally roll with disadvantage if the incoming attack is fast. On success, you take no damage. On a failure, you take regular damage. Optionally, damage becomes enhanced. Block, you're using a strength save. You're subtracting your current armor from the roll. Roll with advantage if the incoming attack is fast or weak. Optionally, roll with disadvantage if the incoming attack is strong. On a success, you take no damage. On a failure, you take regular damage. Optionally, damage can also become enhanced. And then parry is basically the same. Okay, so this isn't something out. This is something I've added. So they're adding this weak, strong, fast, and sweeping. Probably should have put those at the top. I was thinking I couldn't remember that stuff in Karen, or into the odd, but maybe it's there. But no, it's not there. So each enemy attack falls into 4 categories. It should be clear to the players which enemy would deal what type of attack. So you have weak attacks that they possess no special properties. This is goblins or skeletons. Choosing dodge or block should both be valid. Fast attacks. They are too fast to be dodged effectively. Think rapiers, daggers, bows. It's best to block these. Strong attacks. They move slow and pack a punch. Think hammers and ogre's punch. It's best to dodge these. And then you have sweeping attacks that cannot be dodged or blocked. Think magic, a dragon's breath. These are best avoided through movement and cover. And there's a full work in progress at a Google Doc. All right. So, and this again, if you think of something like Demon Souls, Dark Souls, whatever, right? This idea of certain enemies are coming in and they're making their attacks, and you figure out, okay, these I can block, these I should dodge, and these I should just not even get into range of. And they're trying to think, how can they port this to, you're essentially an OSR type game. I like the idea of having different categories of attacks: weak, fast, strong, and sweeping. I don't know that I would categorize them the same way. I almost think that enemies, I can see enemies like, hey, goblins, when they're attacking with clubs, it's a weak attack. But I don't know that I would want to put everything in the weak attack possibility. I would think that a goblin with a dagger, it would be making a fast attack. You almost like to see where you end up getting into kind of 4th edition kind of cards for monsters with, hey, goblin, and then weak attack. And then maybe it has 2 attacks, one's weak, maybe one's fast or strong, something like that. Like it's kind of cool from the aspect of, okay, this is weak. This is, though maybe I would say, do we need weak? Maybe it's just you have fast. Fast is kind of weak by design. Strong, slow, like fast. If strong attacks are slow and basically slow and powerful, then maybe fast is just quick and weak, and then you don't need the weak attack version. And then you have that kind of, maybe sweeping attack's not the right version, not the right verbiage, because I also think is say someone swinging a halberd kind of sweep attack like in 3rd edition would be something that I think you could dodge potentially or block, but it's hitting multiple squares at once, as opposed to something that's a dragon's breath, which is just, floating through an area, which one could also argue they could be dodged depending on how you feel about people dodging dragon's breath. Let's see. Yeah, Brian Smith agrees. Weak and strong seem enough. Yeah, so I don't think, or fast and strong, fast and slow, whatever. So we can say weak and strong. We'll go with this. We don't need this one. I do like the idea, as I mentioned before, of, okay, so if the enemy think you're doing a quick attack, then you can say a block, because it's fast but it's weak. Block. Put up your shield if it's a dagger, or that work great. If it's a arrow, that will work great. Maybe putting up your shield against, or just trying to put up your armor against, say, a warhammer, less great, because those things are kind of designed to just thwap you and break bones beneath your armor. That one you should dodge. So I like that. I like that too. I would really like this if you had some kind of system in which you were doing cards or something, where you could have a card for each kind of attack you're doing. Some of it's going to be kind of weapon based, if possible. So and they would actually make some of the kind of more versatile weapons interesting. If you have something that could be kind of stabby, like I don't know, one of those pole arms that both has a hammer head and, say, a pointy spear tip. If you're jabby with the pointy spear, you get to be quick. If you're doing big swings with the hammer part, you get to be slow. So it gives those versatile weapons a really nice kind of edge. I think as a fighter and someone maybe looking at the monster or creature coming at you, understanding what kind of weapon or what kind of type of attack it's going to tend to have is useful. And then having some different maneuvers you could potentially do. And you could tie these into classes if you wanted to, or give classes a little extra punch if you wanted to have thieves be more dodgy and fighters be better at blocky. Also good. The danger here, though, is that each one of these turns, as you're fiddling with these more mechanics, just gets longer and longer. So I think as a GM, if I were going to implement this, I'd want to find out, one, are my players, do they tend to be analysis paralysis? And if they do tend to go that route, then this might not work so well. But for other ones, they might appreciate it. Cards, something where I feel like you could do quickly. You could even, I feel like you could do a lot of stuff with this if you really thought about it, if you want to go with tie this into initiative. Okay, if you want to have all these options for defense, then you're going to have to take the slow turn. Or you could take a chance of doing something else, then you have kind of a quick turn. There's a lot you could do, but I would worry that it could potentially, at least potentially, slow things down. Let's see. Brian Smith also says, did anybody see the Elden Ring one-shot with Critical Role Crew? From what I heard, it was a homebrew tweak to 5th edition that had pretty simple attack options along with parry reactions instead of saves. I did not see it, but it sounds cool. See, did I give them an upvote? So yeah, so go check out the if you're in Reddit, you can find the post which has a link to the Google Doc. I think I probably like the simple version over the active roll system just because extra rolling. And but yeah, I could definitely see working that in. I often think that people equate maybe too much tactics and just stuff. So someone thinking, oh, look, I have 8 options. Clearly, this is more tactical than if I just have one option. But there's a lot of tactics just in the where you're positioning yourself and moving. I feel like people kind of forget that part. It's not just about dodging versus blocking. It's whatever. It's like, well, where did you position? You could just use, I think even BX has it, either vanilla BX or it's just one of those things where, the fighting defensively where you subtract 4 from your attack and add 2 to your fence and things. Even though simple options can be very tactical, the tactics are often, to me, I just think equated too much with just options. Tactics can be options. Options can lead to tactics, but it's not. I think that's not the only thing tactics. I feel like the part of the actual movement and positioning in the board, either virtual board or physical board, if you're looking at it kind of playing on a play mat, and what that enables for the rest of your party to do and all that interacting, that to me is really tactics. And oftentimes that kind of tactics aren't addressed at all by just giving extra options like, hey, look, now you can block, now you can dodge. Well, that's great, but if you're still just kind of standing still and you're not really looking at the battlefield as a dynamic place, and I don't know. I don't even know if I would say, ooh, that's just super tactical. But people equate tactics with abilities. A little mini rant of mine. Okay. Old school essentials or Into the Unknown. They'll both do you. They'll both do you fine. You kind of got to experiment a little bit, I think, and just see which one of those just works for you. Read them both. See which one you like better. Not going to be one real answer to that. This one, let's see what they've got here, is entitled Hexcrawl Settings, Predominant Terrain Type, posted by Adventure Bundles. A vote for you, Adventure Bundles. Hi there. I'm in the process of creating a Hexcrawl adventure, and while doing my research, I found out that, at least from Googling around, jungle is kind of overdone. Sure, it offers quite many possibilities for interesting scenarios and locations, but there must be other settings and terrains that with proper writing and imagination can be memorable. So which area would you like to play in /GM in? Is jungle as popular because it simply is the best and we can't have enough of it? Or are some of the other terrain types simply overlooked because jungle is easier to write in? P.S. I'm aware that a Hexcrawl map can have many different terrain types in it. I simply ask for the predominant type here. Thanks a lot for any answers. Well, Adventure Bundles, I'm always a little bit wary of these posts that seem to be fishing for, hey, I'm looking for ideas to sell you something, so will you tell me what it is you want to buy so I can make it so you'll buy it? You could do a little bit of research. I don't know. I mean, I'm not even sure I really agree with the with the preposition here or proposition that jungle is overdone, or even that that comment. I mean, obviously there's jungle adventures and things. I think Isle of Dread is pretty jungular. Is that a word? Jungle? has a fair bit of jungle in it, or jungle maybe the predominant terrain there. I don't know. I'm not sure which one I would think. If I had to pick one terrain that was I would consider overdone, I'm not even sure what I would pick. Forests, maybe forests and hills. Lots of things are in the hills. Lots of things are in hills surrounded by forest. I don't know. I mean, I feel like it to me, this is like a backwards question. If you're writing an adventure, what is the place that your adventure is about, and what kind of terrain either is necessary for that place to be the best it can be or enables everything, then do that. I'm trying to see like, ooh, what's the most either the most popular one, or ooh, where's an underserved terrain so I can make one here. I mean, is anyone going to buy an adventure because it takes place in a certain hex? I mean, I'm not going to. I mean, I'm not the person that goes, man, I just need a mountain adventure. I'm just so hard up. I mean, I suppose people do go looking for, I need something in the mountains because somebody give me something in the mountains, and this person can step up and go, ha ha, I have it here. But for me, it just give me a good adventure. Give me a good adventure and put it where it needs to be for the adventure. I mean, if just as a writing exercise or to inspire, sometimes it's good to look and be limited and think of yourself, well, I could write an adventure in any hex, but let me pick a hex and put the adventure in there and it'll spur my creativity. Well, I don't know, put it anywhere. Put it in the plains, put it in the grasslands. Grasslands, I feel like, are maybe the most underserved because they just don't seem overall exciting. Because look at that, grasses, as far as them I can see. People don't find that maybe interesting so much because it's hard to hide stuff there unless you put it underground, or you've got some kind of illusion hiding it, and maybe it just feels not as exciting or as mythical or as fable laden as woods and hills and mountains and places that are shrouded in mists. Let's see. Brian Smith says adventure hook by terrain could be a cool index, I guess, like creature by terrain. Yeah, I guess. Well, this person's looking for specifically wants somewhere to put their adventure. They're writing up an adventure and they're looking for which hex might be the most fruitful, which for them. It would be cool to have some kind of hooks by terrain in terms of just generically speaking. But they would often, I feel like there'd be a lot of overlap. You run into, you run into someone that needs help on the grasslands. You run into somebody who needs help in the woods. You run into a ruin comes out of the hills. A ruin comes out of the woods. A ruin comes out of the plains. I don't know. I mean, yeah, you could, wandering creatures, hooks by terrain, but that's not actually the question. I don't know how to help you there, adventure bundles. Let's just see what someone says. Rover Buff says, currently I'm running Hexcrawl campaign in my Routinian Eastlands setting, which has all sorts of terrain inspired by the Balkans and Central Europe. But for the past few days, I've been thinking about creating a mini setting with a Hexcrawl set in a land inspired by the rural historic Netherlands, as I'm Dutch. This would mean a lot of the lands would be taken up by bogs, bogwoods, lakes, rivers, canals, and polders. I'm not sure what a polder is. He's got a Wikipedia for it. Players would have a variety of means to get around. They may follow the waterways, drag through the marshlands, or follow the narrow roads of the polders, all with their own perils and rewards. Following waterways or poldered roads would be more restrictive but safer, while the marshes and woods could provide shelter to both monsters and lost treasure. Plus, Death mythology is rife with water-dwelling creatures or swamp-dwelling apparitions. This will provide a lot of content for some more unique monsters and interesting encounters. I think that's the thing. See, I'm with Rover Buff. He's not trying to cherry pick the terrain and then jam something in there. He's picking the stuff that is relevant to his interests, their interests, and really just their interests, right? They're Dutch. They want to really touch upon the lore of the Netherlands. The Netherlands is mostly of certain terrain types, so that's what you gravitate to. Great, do that. And I would say that for adventure bundles, do that. What's the stuff that really interests you, that's driving you? Do that. What terrain goes with that? Do that. And then everything else will follow. If it's a great adventure, people will get it. I don't know that people are going to buy an adventure that it doesn't seem that great just because it's in a certain terrain type. My 2 cents. I don't know. Nothing says, oh man, living in the prairie state, I got to disagree. You can do a lot with grasslands. Keep in mind the grass can be 12 feet tall. All right, fair enough. Nothing. I mean, I'm not saying you can't do anything. I'm just saying I feel like it might come across as boring. clearly not nothing what it needs is so for someone like you to come in and really show people the possibilities of the open plains. I just don't. Maybe you can show me. I just don't see a lot of adventures written for the open plains, which is kind of why I threw it in there. I think we talked about before there being some encounter. What was it? Goblins putting holes and hiding in there and waiting for wagons to come by. Certainly, there's stuff like plenty of things with Native Americans on the plains and their kind of stories and tales that you could mine, or like the steppes and the kind of nomad tribes if you want to look at Eurasia. But I feel like I will maintain that I think that you don't find as much plains oriented adventures because I think that especially when if we're looking at kind of bog standard European mythology, sort of medieval kind of settings, that A, there's not a lot of plains, not a particularly large amount of plains there, and B, they just don't have that same kind of mythic pull that mist-shrouded woods or cloudy, mountains and clouds or these kind of weird, lonely hills. Planes just don't have that same thing. But not to say that you can't do it, or that even that you shouldn't do it. Just not that common. Maybe that's a niche that could be filled by someone like Adventure Bundles. Brian Smith says, Netherworld is a common term for a ghost world. I can't look at the Netherlands and not think it's a spectral fantasy region. Yeah, I'm surprised actually. Probably, I mean, I got to think someone's done that, but I agree with the whole kind of having nether in the name definitely gives it a spooky sort of thing. Nothing says, yeah, planes are underused in published adventures. People don't understand what wilderness plains look like. I would totally agree with that. I only have the Vegas sense, and I do tend to do, and my players have seen enough with grasses and things. I tend to exaggerate, and I'm not even really exaggerate. I tend to play up with the fact that they're tall grasses. If there isn't anything to mow them down, and I'm not even sure what those would be, I suppose the elk and buffalo and that kind of thing. But yeah, I like to play with those grasses that are really tall and really affect your ability to see. So it's almost in some ways worse than the woods in cases because woods, at least there are bigger gaps through the trees, where if you have all these grasses that are super tall, it's just a whole, it's kind of like having a curtain in front of your face as you're moving along. But yes, it could be something to think about because I would definitely say that that's maybe the most underserved terrain that I've seen. Krister says, I guess there can be a little forest even if it's a plains hex. Absolutely, yes. And any kind of hex isn't necessarily wall to wall of one terrain. I think when you get in kind of the Great Plains, I think there were definitely trees here and there, but not, and I'm sure clumps of woods. But from what I understand, Krister, and it's in no way has to affect how your hex is, but in predominantly plains areas, the underlying, I think it's the depth of the soil or the depth, I don't know if it's the soil or the water, but something about the depth and quality of the soil just sort of prevents woodlands, broad woodlands in the same way you see these massive forests. So that's, because I was thinking about that actually as I was working on my own stuff as well. Why do plains start and, like why isn't there wall-to-wall woods everywhere? And why do you have these areas like the Great Plains that develop in these massive open meadows? And part of it, not the whole story, because it's a lot of things interconnected, but part of it is that the sort of the quality and kind of depth of the soil, I think in terms of water and everything, is sort of deeper and in a wood, so that that trees are able to really get their roots into and spread it. In plains, you tend not to have that, and so that discourages trees from being able to take root and spread in terms of a forest. Of course, I'm vastly simplifying even the little bit of knowledge I have. That is even a vast simplification of that. Of course, you have different things that might be eating roots and or eating seeds and making it hard in that way. But in terms of kind of why might this happen on a big scale, that's kind of one factor. But there can definitely be clumps of woods and things in the plains. Though there might also be just large open swaths where it's just nothing but open grasses too. System suggestions for running Neverland. Not there goes. I got Nether on my mind now. Neverland. I have no idea. Basic fantasy role-playing game. Permanent wounds. Is this a question? We'll check it out because if it's a question, it might not help. This was posted by HPL fan. basic fantasy role-playing game, Permanent Wounds. I love basic fantasy RPG, but it is brutal. To keep from having to roll up new PCs every session due to attrition, I was thinking of something like a handicap/permanent wound system for recovering from 0 or less than 0 hit points. Does anyone else use something similar? I'm thinking of something like this: 0 hit points, make a save versus death/poison, or take a permanent wound if not. I'm guessing they mean if not healed within 2 rounds, or is it if healed? And I don't understand. So maybe they'll die if they're not healed within 2 rounds, but if they are healed, then they have to make that save. That sounds a little bit confusing to me. If you're less than 0 hit points, you're going to take a permanent wound if healed within 1 round. So I guess, okay, so maybe it is if you're not healed within 1 round, you're just dead. If you have less than 0 hit points, and this is a swig of watered down cider for the working man. If you're at 0, you have 2 rounds for someone to heal you. You have to make a save, take a permanent wound. If you're less than 0, you have 1 round. That seems a little bit clunky. I would just, if someone can heal you, I would just say, look, how about, okay, here's what I would do first. Before you even get to the handicaps, if you're at 0 hit points, you go to exactly 0. You're trying to be a little bit kinder. Then let's just say you have 2 rounds to be healed. If you're healed within 2 rounds, you're just healed. And then if you're not, start making saves. And saves can then start ramping up these wounds until you get to death. And then if you're less than 0, you basically have 1 round to be healed. Otherwise, you start taking death saves. So first, let's just say that you have a little bit of a buffer. Now, on these handicaps, it looks like they have... they haven't really determined how these would work into the rolls that you're making, but basically you can either take, and these seem to be that these are permanent, -2s to any of your 6 stats. And you know, strength, if you get strength hits, and you just have internal injuries that give you a permanent strength deficit, I would actually say that would be kind of constitution. A gut wound is also a kind of internal injuries. For strength, I would say that you've broken bones or something is broken and just doesn't mend quite right. I don't know. Or just muscle injuries. You're going to get a hand injury, gives you an intelligence -2, bad back, -2 dex. Guts are, I would say, internal injuries, -2 to con, and then you're disfigured, you get a -2 charisma. And then you might get -10 to your movement per round for a leg that's never healed. I think there are better ones. I felt like Errant had a pretty good system. I think this one, I mean, I guess they're just looking at this seems a little bit half-baked at the moment. Grump E Wizard has posted with where I stand on the sort of death and dying at 0. I actually like to give in my game right now, I have this hero special abilities. They're kind of class abilities, and some dice they basically kind of put aside and can get back. Some dice they have to spend and they don't get back until they take that overnight rest. But the other thing is those dice are also their buffer for getting beneath 0 hit points. So if you have all your hero dice, and I think my players their characters are all level 2, so they have 5 hero dice. If they have all 5, they can basically get whacked all the way down to -5 hit points before they will die. And they can get patched up anywhere between that 0 and 5 hit dice, or hero dice that they have. If they've spent all but 1 hero die, then they only have a buffer of 1. So I like it because it's, again, it's that risk reward that I like a lot, which is, hey, you can basically, to me, it's kind of like, here's the pool of all my effort, and once I've expended all my effort, I'm in a weaker state. I don't have anything in reserve. So if somebody thwacks me, I'm more easily thwacked. I can be aggressive with it and hope that I don't get to that point, or I can be conservative and keep those for a rainy day when I may need it. And then if you go down to 0, each round you lose 1 of your hero dice till you get down to your max pool. So if you get down to 0, you have 5 rounds to get healed. If you start off at -5, you got to get healed that round, but at least you're not immediately dead. And anybody can kind of do the patch up work, basically wrapping the bandage around or something like that. And the reason why I like it is one of the things that, as an adult, as a kid, I didn't really care. As an adult, a player, as a GM, in fact, I like the tension that adds. If someone just dies and you can just leave their body on the ground, which I saw one of the groups I jammed before this one, somebody died. They're like, they're dead. Just, it's over. But if they're dying suddenly in the middle of that combat where one of them is laid low, now they really have to make decisions. Do I go to try to save that person or do what I'm doing? And I like that decision making. It leads them to interesting spots. It leads them into having to make these choices. And some of it is good, some of it's bad, right? Oh, on the good, saying, yeah, they can save that character. But if you're fighting this monster over here and then you decide I'm going to save my guy, so I run over and I'm kneeling down and I'm bandaging up that guy, and then that monster sees you walk over there and it walks over and just thwacks you, and now you're distracted and you're at -2. Your armor class is not as high because you're kneeling and you're facing whatever you have to do, and then you go down. It can really start to tumble. Now that if someone else is left, now that, oh gosh, we have 2 people I have to try to save, and we've got monsters and all this stuff. Or do I try to hopefully put down this monster this round and do everything I can to do that? And then hopefully this person can hang on long enough where I can get over there and then save them. So I really like that. So I appreciate extending out life. And to me, it's not a matter of cheapening the lethality. It's just a matter of just adding more to it, adding more tension. In my home game, when that player character died a session or so, not one, the session before last, the fact that they were in this kind of dying state when there was time, but somebody had to do something, really added to the moment. Whereas if they just expired suddenly, I think the whole tension of that session would have just sort of, there wouldn't have been there. It wouldn't have been any tension at all. It would have been like, oh, they're dead. Now I can just do something else. There's my point of view on that. But I have no particular expertise. I would say look at Errant as something that we looked at recently that had, I thought, some good wounds and injuries tables if you're looking for that. All right, where was I? Here we go. This is permanent wounds. Okay, suggestion for blog. All right. This was a nice story. I read it the other day, hence why I already have an upvote here. I'm not going to go back and read it, but basically someone saying that they went from, kind of went from that 5th edition, embraced the sort of OSR spirit, and how they've been loving life, which is great. Urban adventures in the OSR. I think it's a question. I don't have particular goals. Let's go to the next. Best one-page adventure. Oh, look at that. That was me from the other day. Let's see. The elf in BX is a fighter / magic user. This might be an interesting one. It's got a lot of comments. Get an upvote right now. This is another rover buff. Wow, rover buff. Our second rover buff of the day. Broughton Goodfellow. Hey, Broughton says, got to have that tension with death or the game is boring. Yes. And I think that's one thing I think that they missed out on a little bit playing just kind of vanilla, old school Diet Zero, is that it's wonderful when the characters are dying and seeing what the party could try to do to save them, and you get to have those dying moments. They have a chance to do a little monologue as they're slowly expiring. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And you can, and it's another thing that you can have, you can add class things to. Maybe fighters can go on some kind of walking, dead man walking kind of thing, where they can still be effective in combat at 0 until they hit some number, and other classes just kind of collapse and are just bleeding out. It gives you a chance to really just another hook to put on all kinds of stuff. And yeah, it just adds a ton of fun and tension, and really allows you to kind of draw out stuff that you just don't get to do. And it's stuff that's in the fiction. When characters in stories and novels die, mostly, some of them, yeah, they'll just neck snap and they just go dead, which can still happen in these kind of systems, but often they'd like to draw it out a little bit. So have fun drawing it out. Rover Buff says, if the elf in BX is a fighter magic user, what would they, cleric / thief, be like? I've been pondering what other sort of BX class mashups one could make besides the classic elf, and this kind of stood out to me. A cleric fighter would be a paladin, a thief magic user a bard, perhaps a cleric thief would be a ranger of sorts. But if we want to go the race as class route, what kind of race could befit a cleric slash thief? Also, has anyone ever attempted a fighter slash thief or a cleric slash magic user? Do you have any other mashups you made? Feel free to share. Oh, my camera just lost me. Okay, I'm back. Ha ha. Oh, I didn't go. There we go. All right, I'm back. Everything total. I am building tension. Yes, I am. Hey, Tonka Todd. No, long time no see. I think maybe you've been in here stealthy mode. I'm back. All right. So, has anyone made a fighter thief or cleric magic user? Cleric magic users is one of those weird things. Seems a little bit weird. I suppose that's really a druid. It's kind of maybe or kind of a Merlin style. Someone that, depending on which version of Merlin you like, is kind of has some religious aspects to it as well as having sort of magic spells. Miso 82 mentions The Lies of Loch Lamora by Scott Lynch, which I have no knowledge of, but might be cool. Anyone else? Drow as being, let's see, what Drow being maybe a fighter or thief? Cleric magic user, maybe. I more I'm thinking about it, I would like this. It would be interesting. It would be interesting to try to find the priest in the cleric, and if we were to take that out, what would that look like? That might be an interesting kind of maybe just a mental exercise. Must have been an invisibility potion. Everything total says, yep, that's it. That or technical difficulties, but I'll go with invisibility potion. Well, I don't have any particular wisdom for Rover Buff, but it's kind of fun to think about. I mean, that's one nice thing when you split up classes and you allow kind of multi-classing is that you can have all those kind of fun. And look, in AD&D and in 2E, I definitely played multi-class characters and had a lot of fun with them. I always liked or appreciated that slower progression. You had to play with it. You're going to get more stuff up front, but it was going to take you a lot longer to progress. And I thought that was a nice balance and also easy. Hold on a second. I feel a cough coming on. Man, I just hit the mute button. And I think that was a lot easier than, and then later on when they tried to add, oh, if you multi-class, you get these. There's some core abilities that you don't get if you multi-class. If you multi-class, you get all this kind of weird stuff. It's just make it like double the progression or something simple and just let them have it. Because yeah, on the one hand, yeah, you're getting a lot up front, but on the other hand, when you're level 1 still and everyone else is level 3 and 4, you kind of feel it. There is a little bit of that, man, I kind of wish I was level 4. And plus, even though you have all those abilities, your hit points aren't scaling. So yeah, you have all these abilities, but you still have 5 hit points. Everyone else now has 10, 13, 14 hit points. You feel it. You feel that slower progression. Okay, someone's got questions. I'm not seeing a lot of like, where are my interesting blog posts? We could look at Isle of Dread. A few questions. We got 20 comments here. A few. They're both 1 and 1. Isle of Dread, a few questions posted by BadBug1. I've run this module like 30 plus years ago using BeckMe, and I'm planning to run it now using OSE. Are there any differences I should be aware of, or can I run it as is? Is there any recommended YouTube/blog with interesting suggestions regarding running it? I saw Seth's. That was great. Thanks. I think I actually responded to this one. I don't know where my response is. Oh, see, I upvoted someone's response down there. I thought I did. Maybe I didn't. I don't think you have to you don't have to change anything. You don't have to change anything. You can pretty much run it as is. Let's see, Tim Bannock suggests prepping the villages so they feel interesting and unique. And they also added, you could definitely add some different modules to the island if you want to buff it up. If you want to make that kind of, once you get to the crater, a little bit more fun. Hidden Shrine of Tomoa-chan is good. I have not read the 5e remake from Goodman Games. Evil Scientist 42 has some resource to share. Stone Age Sorcery. It's a free ebook. And Wolfpacks and Winter Snow, which both have random tables for stuff. Cool. Well, I was hoping. Anything else? Sea monsters in the heart of the sea. There's some stuff. I thought there'd be maybe more. I did do a whole read along of Isle of Dread, but I know someone suggested, or someone asked if I could do some kind of prep stuff, or if you're running a pre-made Hexcrawl. Maybe I could start with Isle of Dread and look at some Hexcrawl ones and do some kind of prep videos as far as what would I do or with that adventure to kind of get it ready for myself. So I might go back to that. Let's see, that saw that one already. Death and Dismemberment tables. Oh, that's another Death and Dismemberment. This was another question. This was posted by Macular. Death and Dismemberment tables. A lot of Death and Dismemberment tables have options like Fatal Wound, Death in 1d6 turns. What's the expected way to deal with this? Are they just doomed no matter what? Can any old healing potion or healing spell get them back to normal? Seems like the latter would be wrong, considering it's hard enough as it is to roll a 2 or 3 to die from the table. I would let potions and things work. I mean, really, it's going to depend on your game. In my game, it's not like those potions and things. I don't think my party has any. I don't think my party has seen any healing potions. So if they had one and they chose to use what would be an extremely rare resource in my game, as it is, to help somebody who was kind of walking doomed for 1d6 turns, I'm fine. I have seen some tables that have specified that this person cannot be saved. I want to say even an errant, as I keep thinking back to errant, might have had something like that, hey, if you get this result, you are just fatal and there's no amount of healing or anything. Like, your soul has already been tagged for death. It's just the Reaper is taking its time getting to you. Null Terminated said, working on merging a modified 5e Tomb of Annihilation on top of the Isle, plus ASE, and a modified Barrier Peaks to fill the empty space. Wow, Null Terminated, that sounds awesome. It sounds like a lot of work. Good luck with that one. Tomb of Annihilation, I liked it, and definitely you could take that jungle vibe, and yeah, since you're going from kind of jungle to jungle, I think it would be a pretty good fit. I I'd be curious, Null Terminate, at some point how your strategies for backporting that, because that is a purely 5th edition adventure. How you what your strategy is, or how you are backporting it to OSR. Maybe that one doesn't need that much backporting. I'm not even sure. Okay, let's see. Where are we at now? 15 minutes. So we got some time for some more stuff. Oh, I'm back on this first page, though. Next page. The Merchant campaign. This might be good. All right. Oops, got another cough coming on. Hold on. Broughton says, Tomb of Annihilation is a doozy to run, currently running it. Yeah, it seems like there's a lot going on there, but it seems fun. It seems like you got a lot of things to kind of play around with, and you're sort of in a different terrain than you used to. It's that jungle terrain, maybe that other person was talking about. Null Terminator says, cheating a bit by referring to the Goodman Games updates as a guide. Is that cheating? I wouldn't say it's cheating. The Merchant campaign submitted 1 day ago by Imperial_Pork. I've written up a few thoughts on running a merchant campaign here, and we shall go there and see them. I think I've often thought merchant campaign equals rules heavy, fun light, but I was aiming for the opposite with this write-up. Let me know if you have any thoughts or suggestions. I'm thinking of including a market. I don't know why they put market in quotes, but a quote-unquote market with every major city I write, including some. Again, why is this in quotes? I don't know. Merchant caravan travel encounters. Why is merchant caravan in quotes? It's not. I don't know. All right. So this is posted to the Shadow and Fae blog. The Merchant campaign. All right. You should see that hit the chat. And then I will, as soon as I see it hit, I will highlight it so folks can see what the heck we're looking at. From YouTube's or elsewhere, or else. Oops, oh, I did that again. I'm trying to make this a little bit bigger, and I hit the wrong window. All right. Shadow and Fae blog. The merchant campaign posted March 30th, 2022. Merchants are common characters in RPGs. We need folks who have just the right item for slightly more than just the right price. From barkeepers and armorers to alchemists and enchanters, merchants are vital. But when a player says, "Can I be a merchant?" we might be tempted to stutter through an explanation of, "Well, that's a neat idea, but economics. Shame on us." For some odd reason, we have this idea that adventurers should be poor and desperate, and it's not, quote-unquote, balanced to allow them to be trading large amounts of wealth and goods. If they had all that money, they could just buy whatever they wanted. True, but is that bad? They can afford masterwork weapons, armors that are just as much works of art as they are impenetrable shells, potions by the bucket, and, through a very generous donation, maybe even gain access to the miracles of the temples. These are powerful people. With all that wealth comes a plethora of trouble, and it isn't gained without hard work, cunning, and patience. Personally, I think it makes for a very interesting campaign. Trade goods. A trade good can be any item purchasable in large quantities. When purchasing trade goods, a minimum of 3 slots worth of the good must be purchased. Otherwise, you could stop wasting the merchant's time and visit a shop. The single unit of a trade good has only one important number. Standard cost. How many gold pieces does a slot of this trade good cost on average? Sample trade goods. Food, 10 gold pieces. Smoked meats, sealed cheeses, seasonal fruits, wines, etc. Or 25 gold pieces, iron for the smelters, herbs, 50 gold pieces, a variety of potent plants a skilled alchemist would find incredibly useful, tools, 50 gold pieces, sturdy crafter's tools for a variety of intricate jobs, spice, 100 gold pieces, cinnamon, saffron, and a multitude of other wondrous flavors, and then finally luxuries, 200 gold pieces, beautiful clothes, fine jewelry, etc. All right, so a couple of things I'm just going to pause here. We don't know what a slot is, and I have no idea whether to look at these numbers and go, oh, these numbers seem reasonable or not reasonable. I don't know what the heck is a slot? Is this a slot like how much a horse can carry? Is that a wagon load? It can't. I imagine it's not just your inventory, an inventory slot of some kind. So we don't know yet what a slot is, and I always feel I'm just gonna keep repeating this, and maybe someone will heed me, and hopefully I will heed myself when the time comes. Please try to define your terms before you're using them, because that leaves people me going like, what the heck is a slot? I feel like with these goods, spices and luxury should probably be the same price. Maybe even, I mean, spices historically have been some of the most expensive stuff per, unit of weight that you could have, even more so than a lot of beautiful clothes and fine jewelry. So I might swap that around. And to go back to the original proposition here, right? So okay, why aren't you, you want to be a merchant? I don't think that necessarily the thing is that it would be bad for people to be merchants. And yes, I think we often think about, myself included, as your adventurers. It's great to start off poor and hungry because you need stuff, and that needing of stuff is the driver, or a primary driver, for getting out in the adventures. I need money. I need money to level up. I need money just to pay for food. Otherwise, I'm going to be scrounging around in the wilderness like an animal. And goodness knows the wilderness is not a place you want to be scrounging around. So I got to get out there. If you're going to hand somebody and say, well, you're a merchant with thousands of gold pieces, in some ways that does change the equation. You got to figure out, well, what are the needs? What are the needs? What is driving this character to do stuff? Are we just playing a trading game? We're just going to be walking the caravan roads. Is that the adventure, or are we supposed to be merchants that need to get out there and adventure in some way? So we have to kind of recalculate what those needs are. Let's see, everything total asks, is it like buying wholesale? Then it should be half the normal cost that a shop asks. Yeah, I think it'll be at least half, right? I imagine it's got to be wholesale. I think you're going to a merchant as opposed to a shop because you're buying wholesale and you're buying in bulk. That slot is some kind of bulk, I would hope, we don't know yet, some kind of bulk unit. And yeah, whatever it is should be about at least, at most half. I think even more, you might say a third. And then, of course, you think of luxuries, beautiful clothes. Are we talking like bolts of clothing? Probably more than finished clothes, because you're not, if we're playing sort of your classic medieval kind of age, you're not really getting mass-produced clothes. So you're getting bolts of fine cloth that you would go sell to a lord, who then would have people working for them, or tailors in town, if you're going to a town with independent sort of tailors, and people who would then buy the cloth off of you to make the fine clothes and shoes or whatever that they would sell. Same thing with jewelry. You're bringing the gold and maybe the loose jewels, or even maybe jewels that are not really cut yet, and then you're taking it to town to sell to the jewelers and the folks who will then do the refinement and putting them into their final forms. I would imagine, but we don't know what this particular person's concept is. Null Terminate says, I don't know if I've seen you talking about Ultraviolet Grasslands, but this seems like the same deal. I've not read Ultraviolet Grasslands. Null Terminate is on my list, so that's why you haven't seen me talking about it, but that's interesting. Broughton says, Trophy Gold deals with being poor and desperate very nicely. I'm not sure what Trophy Gold is, actually. Is that a system, a thing, or concept? But I like the sound of it. Okay, so we have these sample trade goods. Now we have the market. Each major city has a market. I don't know why he's putting market in or they are putting market in quotes. Is it like it's a market, like it's not really a market, or what? Just take out the quotes. It's a market. Why are we suggesting that major cities wouldn't have markets? Of course they would. Just market. Lowercase m, remove the quotes. Each major city has a market where trade goods are bought and sold. For each trade good in your game, set its value. And again, why is value in quotes? From 50% to 150%. You can use a table, something like this. Roll 2d6. Very low is 50%, low is 75%, normal is 100%, high is 125%, very high is 150%. What are these percentages for? So is this meaning that we're buying it? We want to buy it for, I don't know. I don't know. I'll play. Oh, let me see. Well, let's see what the next piece of text is. Ryan Smith says every market is actually an illegal fighting ring. I mean, it sounds like it. It sounds like market, kind of wink, wink, like it's not really a market at all. But we're talking about markets, so what's the deal? Okay, a player can ask around about prices in other towns in order to learn good trade routes. They can spend an hour talking with folks in the marketplace to get one rumor about an item or town of their choice. As in, where could I find cheap luxury goods? Or what's selling well in Afrosia? There's a 1 in 6 chance that this rumor is completely inaccurate. But I don't know what does that have to do with the percentages? So I'm trying to understand. I guess what you have to have. Okay, so I'm going to see if I'm getting this. Oh, now the quotes are hitting the chat. I can't even read them because it's going to make me angry with all these things quoted. Just randomly quoting things, putting things in quotes. Okay, so here's what I'm guessing. Food, we determined food is a 10 gold piece trade good. You end up going from town A, we would then roll 2d6. So in town A, food that has a base price, maybe we call this a metaphysical price or just a generic price of 10 gold pieces. But in town A, it actually has maybe very low demand, or you might say these 2d6 things. So we just say the price is very low. Obviously, there's a lot of food in town A, so that the price to buy food in town A in bulk would be 50% of 10 gold pieces. So I would buy 5 gold pieces for 1 slot. Here's my turn to use quotes. Quote, slot, unquote, of food. Now I go to town B, which conversely has a very high demand for food, so that I can then sell my 5 gold pieces worth of food, or I can sell that food. It doesn't even matter what I paid for it, but now the food price in town B, you take 10 gold pieces, now you're multiplying it by 150%, is now 15 gold, so that I get a nice, tidy profit of 10 gold. Does that sound right to people? Seems a bit fiddly. Broughton says, it's a system of tabletop role-playing games. The main goal is to get rich or die trying. Your character has burdens they have to cover and makes you as the player do more daring things to come out on top. Okay, this is going back to trophy gold. Okay, that sounds cool. I'll have to check it out. What about expiration dates, says Brian Smith? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. This seems like a kind of a long way around to get to something. I kind of like the idea if you have your basically your handbook price for a lot of stuff, and then just figuring out like, yeah, your bulk price, depending on what it is going to be 50%, 30%, 25%. You can even kind of figure it out. Are you talking raw materials? For example, and then or a intermediary material. So you go from just kind of gold and just bulk bars or something to then say necklaces of gold. If you're doing the bulk bars, and maybe you can get X amount percent of whatever the price of something would be. If it's been partially worked, you're kind of picking it up from the people who are making necklaces, but they just have empty settings, and you're taking it that step. Or maybe that might be too much complications already. But just take kind of the handbook price. Figure out that, okay, you're buying this stuff sort of raw in bulk. Let's say it's 30% or 25% of the total cost. And just do that. Doing with all these kind of things and making different values and whatever. Just, you got book prices. Just use your book prices. Boy, chat's having too much fun with just randomly putting things in quotes. Brian Smith, I'm not even going to ask about the expiration dates of the food, of our bulk food purchases. It's probably, given what kind of medieval food you're buying in bulk and moving around with you, it's not going to be, it's like hard tack, dried meat. Your expectation shouldn't be much, even if it's fresh. Okay, market movements. Whenever the party enters a town, you may choose a random trade good and roll a d6. On a 1, it decreases in value 1 step. On a 6, it increases in value 1 step. In addition, if a merchant sells a large quantity of goods at a city's market, adjust the price down 1 step for each 1d6 weeks. They purchase a large quantity of goods, increase the price 1 step for 1d6 weeks. Just that would be enough to run a merchant campaign. Roll up some markets and watch as your players start purchasing elephants and donkeys, loading them up with saffron, and marching 3 weeks on the open road. in order to make a killing. The problem here already is, not the problem, but the thing you have to deal with is the question of why. Why are you doing this? You must, I would imagine you must turn, instead of XP for gold in dungeons, it's now XP for gold that you've traded. Otherwise, why are they doing it? I mean, beyond just the fact that maybe that's just what they want to as players. We just want to explore being merchants, which is totally fine. You better have a mechanic in mind that's going to link in with this, which hasn't been addressed yet, because we're already talking about, hey, this is what they're doing, and now we're adding complications. We have to ask ourselves, if the party just has a bunch of money, why are, what is pushing them to spend it in that way? And I would hope that it's because we've said in this campaign we're playing merchants, or we're going to make merchants a viable option, that instead of looting things and getting gold that way, you can get gold by trading things for other things. Putting things on top of other things, as they used to say. Bryce Smith says, step 1, buy elephants. Step 2, load with saffron. Step 3, profit. Pretty much. All right, but let's not make it too easy. Bandits, more than just highway robbers. High-way robbers. Individuals hauling massive amounts of trade goods should expect full bandit raids and prepare accordingly. Of course, there's more than one way to deal with bandits, and a cunning merchant might just decide to bribe them to leave their own assets alone and attack those of a rival. Speaking of rivals, other merchants might start to feel threatened by a merchant party and might start taking hostile actions, such as selling cheap when the party comes to town in order to lower the prices, or buying up to increase the cost of a particular good when the party thought they could get it for cheap. Like bandits, there's no limit to how the party can deal with rivals. I'm sure a thriving band of adventurers can think of several appropriate solutions. Monstrosities. Often adventurers are hired by merchants to drive off whatever nightmare has been attacking roads, like the one between West Hampshire and Blockwood. What will your party do when they are the merchants and the prized elephant has just been eaten by a red tyrant and there are 3 tons of cinnamon just lying on the side of the road? Banking. Will your party carry all their massive wealth with them, or will they put it in safer but less lucrative banks? What then if the bank is robbed while they were away? And then that leads on to payment. How will the party manage their money? If one player is the merchant, do they have a contract with the others as bodyguards? Also in quotes, for some reason. If the party wants to be quote-unquote pirates, how will they offload their stolen goods? What arm of the law will come after them? Preferably both the left and the right. And then taxes. What if certain cities had a higher tax rate on transactions than others? Might the party attempt to smuggle the goods in? Or could they lead a revolution against the town's leaders to drop the high taxes? And then limitation. All the money in the world won't buy you an elephant if there are no elephants to be bought. Fair point. And then finally, luxury. When the party is decked out in fine armor and bejeweled swords, what is there left to buy? Will they build a fortress, commission a temple, raise an army of mercenaries to wage war upon the White Queen and her horde of undead giants? Money may be the immediate goal, but at the end of the day, it is a means to an end. What ends await the fabulously wealthy of our campaign worlds? As you can see, a merchant campaign is full of interesting ideas and is, I think, a relatively easy idea to implement. If the party thinks it will be fun, you might introduce an NPC to explain the rules of the market to them in character. If you're interested in playing a character dedicated to being a merchant, here's a glog cast from Skirples that seems quite good. The Merchant. If you like these rules in a one-page printout, grab it here. All right, so look, I've been joking about the kind of stuff, everything being in quotes. Terrence says the formula has been laid out for us for literal centuries. Yes, indeed. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think this could work in conjunction with just a regular game. If your party gets to a point where they have money, and I think often one of the issues in the OSR, or just in gaming, well, OSR, I would say, are games that really, you get a lot of gold. And I think 5th edition, it might even be worse, is we have all this money, what do we spend money on? Certainly one option is if they feel like it, becoming merchants. Now, if you're becoming merchants, that does kind of change the game. And if you just, which Shadow and Faye did not really address, is, well, how does this affect your advancement? Because part of the thing is you're leveling up. If we get a whole bunch of gold and we're level 2 and we decide to become merchants, do we just sit at level 2 forever? And sure, we're getting wealthy, but we're not getting any stronger. We're not any more of a capable than we were when we started becoming a merchant, because we haven't progressed in our classes. So you want to figure out how to mechanize this to make it a real option if we wanted to. I definitely think, yeah, it's important to have means to an end. I think all these things are good. Thinking about banking, thinking about markets. It's a bit fiddly, but you can always use spreadsheets and things like that to kind of make it less fiddly if you want. I mean, sure, I think if your party just that's what they want to do, then yeah, come up with a way to make it happen. But it definitely changes the game in a pretty drastic way in terms of what's fun and interesting for everybody, including the GM, because you definitely are getting into that kind of socio-political thing and not so much. I mean, you basically you're going straight into, I mean, I would call it hex crawling, because if you're on a caravan, you're generally going where there are roads. So you're really just point crawling everywhere, and then it's just things you run across on the road. Is that enough for you as a GM? Is that enough for your players? Maybe, maybe not. You might have to have fun. I feel like you'd kind of want to mix in adventuring still. I might not find it fulfilling, but I'd be willing to give it a shot if my players suddenly said, hey, we want to be merchants now. I could try it. Elfbait says, nope. You expand your trade empire, caravans, ships, strongholds along the way, merchant houses in major cities, trading posts in far off lands. And then, I'm not sure. Elfbait, I missed your context. As a merchant, you start paying mercenaries to create markets. And Brian Smith says, we want to play, quote unquote, pirates. Yes. Well, one man's pirate is what was it? What was the name for it where they were the pirates that were basically given letters to go and attack other people? There was a name for that. It's been too long since I've played Sid Meier's Pirates to remember the term. That one is privateers. Thank you, Up. Yeah, that was the one that actually worked the best. Pirates. Because you might be licensed. So it's interesting. I think there's not enough here. None of rules here. I don't even know what the one pager for rules would be. This is kind of maybe not the way I would put it together. Though maybe in their one pager kind of supplement, it would work better. Mostel, yes. Everyone's hitting me with privateer. Yes, privateer with letters of marque and reprisal. Exactly. Hey, shout out to Sid Meier's Pirates, which was an amazing game back on my Commodore 64. And then I played it again, I want to say on my Xbox ages ago, and it was still really good. Well, that's that. We're going to wrap it up here. Thanks, Shadow and Faye, for posting it. I think it's a good conceptually. I think once your party gets, I don't know if I would start your party off as merchants, unless the player said to me, say, we want to start a new campaign and we want to start from jump as merchants. Maybe, or I still might say, well, you're still starting off with 100 gold. Figure out how to make it happen. Maybe you got to work for other merchants doing piddly tasks and then work yourself up the merchant tree until you get to the part where you can support and buy your own caravans. I think I would want to come up with, well, how much experience for gold moved in markets would work. Some kind of number, maybe not 1-to-1. I'm not sure. I think I'd want to definitely deal with market fluctuations, and I feel like you need to lean into some spreadsheets or something to kind of make that work. Certainly there are good ideas there for if you wanted to have some merchant factions, how they might deal with the players. And let's face it, the players kind of act like merchants in some way already. When you come out of the dungeon full of loot and you go to sell it somewhere, you are essentially acting as a merchant. So some of the ideas of how merchants might respond to the players coming in, offloading all bunch of treasures and loot and piles of junk and whatever is already fairly good. Let's see. Elfbait said, interesting note, a privateer bill was presented to Congress this year to try to put bounties on Russian oligarchs' yachts. Not trying to be political, just found it weird in this day and age. That is interesting. I didn't even know that. I'm Brian Smith, I agree with you. I'll have to look that up and learn more, because it absolutely is a fascinating thing that this kind of historical thing from a foregone age has re-emerged. All right, folks. Well, that is all I've got for this week. If you want to give a thumbs up on your way out, and if you didn't subscribe, that would be awesome. Otherwise, have a great weekend. I will see you on the other side, though. As I mentioned at the start, probably not Monday because I got to do an airport pickup. And then for April, and I'll post more about it, I've got a family that's going to be in town for an extended period of time. So my schedule might be in flux. I will try to make it work. We'll see what happens. But other than that, Have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Have a great weekend. Game on. Thanks, Brian Smith. Talk to you later. Bye, everybody.